This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamitdoitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and welcome back, Jennifer McClellan, delegate from Richmond, Chris Peace, delegate from Hanover. Thanks to the two of you for being on. We're going to start the program today talking about some of the commissions that you're serving on and some things that are happening right now. So if we could start with you on the Martin Luther King Commission.
Sure. The King Commission is in the midst of its celebration of the sesquicentennial of the Emancipation Proclamation. You recall we kicked that off with a concert back in April that was very well received. Our next event in September, we will unveil plaques in the Capitol that commemorate the African Americans who served on the Constitutional Convention of 1867 and 68, and the first African American members of the General Assembly. They'll be unveiled with a reception on September 17th and then available for public viewing starting on the 18th. And you might recall that was the result of two joint resolutions passed last session. One of the projects we're working on now related to that is trying to find all of the descendants of those gentlemen so that we can invite them to the unveiling. If any happen to be watching, we invite you to contact Brenda Edwards.
Yeah, we're going to put her phone number up too.
Good.
Yes.
We also just set up a Facebook page. Facebook, it's the VAMLK Commission. So I invite you to go and take a look at that. We've got a link to the resolution that lists all of those gentlemen. If you go to our website, you can learn even more. But that's just one of the events we're doing to commemorate the sesquicentennial. It's one of many of our projects. We're also in the midst of celebrating the anniversary, or commemorating, I should say, not celebrating, of when Virginia closed the schools in response to Brown versus Board of Education. We've got a number of other projects, so I invite folks to take a look at our website and see everything that we've got going on.
Okay, thank you. And among the commissions you serve on, the one on the War of 1812.
Right. It's the Forgotten War, and it's actually the second war of America's independence, and has a great legacy, particularly Homeland Security. Fort Monroe is part of that legacy out of the War of 1812. Kirk Cox is the chairman of the commission. I serve as chair of the advisory council. We've had great public input, grassroots support, people who are historians, unlike me. I guess I'm an amateur historian, but I love all things Virginia, and we've had great input from people who can help us tell the story of the War of 1812 to people who maybe don't know much about it. Unfortunately, the War of 1812, I think, has been co-opted by Maryland with Francis Scott Key and Fort McHenry, and certainly they have a lot to be proud of there. But many of the naval battles, even land engagements, were in Virginia. The battle over the Chesapeake Bay was hugely important to the success of the war. Plus, the war was run by Virginians, with Madison and Monroe being chiefly involved in the execution of the strategy, and then William Henry Harrison, who was a general during the war, ends up being President of the United States, obviously one of our fine Virginia presidents. But we've been trying to engage the public through a series of events, much like the MLK Commission. We had a Richmond Symphony presentation as well that kicked off session last year that was well received. We were able to pack the house with children, school kids from across the Commonwealth so they could enjoy period music and learn a little bit about the War of 1812. We just had a boat tour or harbor tour of Norfolk and Hampton and got to see where these engagements took place on water. And the perspective of Norfolk and Hampton from the water really gives you an appreciation of how these engagements were executed. And so we had a great turnout for that. We dedicated some Department of Historic Resources markers, which are part of our War of 1812 Heritage Trail that's been established. And each of these panels will have sort of general copy, so people will get a basic background of the War of 1812 on all of the markers, and then they'll be able to read about, say, the sack of Hampton, which is something that I did not know about, and it was pretty significant at the time, and with the British and French soldiers coming on shore and not doing some nice things there in Hampton. But it's a great commission. We're proud that we haven't had much state support. That's been primarily private funds, including our logo, which was donated by students from Hampden-Sydney College. We hope to have and are planning for a symposium next year at Fort Monroe for educators from across the Commonwealth to come for a couple of days and learn more about that era of history. So we're really proud of our efforts and how we've engaged the folks from Virginia on the War of 1812.
Significant things going on both of these commissions, and while we're having this conversation here in Richmond, it's sort of Redskins place too, and that's sort of it's sports and political, because the Commonwealth provided some funding, the City of Richmond other funding, and just today on August 5th, as we're having the conversation, DMV reported that with all those specialty license plates that are out there in Virginia, 100 of them, that the Washington Redskins Foundation got over $100,000 this past year that they use for community projects. But we would want to mention too that for the efforts to clean up the Chesapeake Bay, I know something very important to each of you and to all of us, received the most money, nearly $300,000 this past year. So $3.5 million that those of us who choose to have one of those 100 plates help contribute to special causes and to colleges and universities in Virginia.
Yeah, it's great news, David. And Jennifer represents the city of Richmond, but as a Virginia, I think we're all proud of what has happened in the city with the Redskins training facility. Bon Secours was tremendous to step up and construct the facility. 3 North, Jay Hugo, who's a Ashland native from Hanover County. We're very proud of
making
him.
That connection.
Yeah, it all comes back to the center of the universe, as you should know. But it's a great facility. It's a great place to bring your family for these couple weeks, and certainly will be economic stimulus for that area. With all of the other condo and residential units that are being put in around the boulevard and up and down Broad in that area, it's going to be great. And right next to DMV. So go to the Redskins training, go to DMV, get your Redskins plate, help the kids, because that Redskins Foundation is also looking to take some of that money and invest it in educational opportunities for our Virginia Indians. Without getting into the perennial controversies over the name itself, they are looking to do some really good things for educational resources for young Virginia Indians. And that obviously makes me happy, because I represent 3 of the state-recognized tribes, and we're working to do a Virginia Indian tribute here at the Capitol, along with the other projects. So all in all, it's a win-win for the region, for the city as well.
And I think most importantly, all of the fans that are coming out are spending their money in City of Richmond restaurants and hotels and stores. And so we think it is going to be a big boost to the city and to the state as a whole as they bring their tax dollars with them.
And you're putting in a plug for the location for DMV. It may segue us into another conversation because that's where people can also go if they're not registered to vote.
Yes.
Or if they have changed their residence since the last time they voted. And so between State Board of Elections and DMV, some real good partnership there to help people even start the registration online.
Right.
But while they're there at the Redskins facility, it's just right around the
Gone
corner.
over.
Yeah, I'm not sure it'll be top of mind, David, this summer, but after Labor Day, when all these campaign ads start and people start to focus on the fall elections, I'm sure that will be a great opportunity. It's been a busy political summer, but I'm sure the fall will see some of its own fireworks as well.
So what comments would you all have for your viewers? You are friends and colleagues, but you represent different parties, a Democrat and a Republican. Right. We don't have a Libertarian here, but
That's right.
What thoughts do you have about the upcoming election? Certainly the eyes of the nation are on Virginia.
Absolutely. I mean, I think every year we say that it's the most important election, and every year it proves to be true. But I think this year we have one of the starkest contrasts between the tickets that we've seen since probably in my lifetime, or in our lifetime. We're about the same age. I think we saw after the 2008 and 2009 elections that state elections really do matter. When Virginia went Democratic for the first time in 44 years, a lot of people came out to elect Barack Obama president in Virginia. But then the following year, a lot of those people stayed home, and we got a very different governor, attorney general, and lieutenant governor. Then 2 years later, when we got a Republican Senate, people started to see that you can't just stop voting for president, that every single election matters to what direction the country, the state, and your locality are going to go. And so probably it's more important to come out in a state election or a local election because what we do will affect your everyday life more directly than what the president does. So we saw a lot of controversy in the 2012 General Assembly, and I like to tell everybody that session was brought to you by everybody that came out and voted in 2008 and then stayed home in 2009 and 11. So everybody who just voted in 2012, we had a high turnout election. Everybody needs to pay attention to this race, look at these candidates, make your decision, and come out and vote. And obviously I have a preference who you vote for, but it's really important that you make your voice heard. Again, because what we do next session, the governor will put in a new budget, the General Assembly will come in and make tweaks to it, but the governor really will set the agenda. And it's much more important that your voice be heard in that governor's race, and in the entire House of Delegates is up for re-election. Make your voices heard there. We affect your life much more directly than the President of the United States.
I agree with her on the point of voter participation, and I hope everybody votes. I mean, I don't think it's something that we should take for granted. It's something that we should exercise, and we need more voices in the system. I've really actually enjoyed some of the controversial periods over the last couple of years during the legislative process because it's brought out people that have not been participating on both sides. Whether they're waving a yellow flag for the Tea Party or whether they're protesting here about a social issue. I mean, they're people that have, literally come here for the first time to engage in the process, and that's a healthy thing. I love that. That's why I serve, because I think it's important to hear from multiple voices. The candidates at the top of the ticket are dramatically different in their policy positions. I believe that the current Attorney General who's running for governor wants to try to focus on an economic development and a jobs message. He may have a more difficult time getting to that message with all of the sort of collateral issues that are out there. And I think Mr. McAuliffe has some of those issues as well. So I hope that we can focus on real issues on both sides, and not things that are more to sell papers or the headline grabbers and that type of thing. Because in the end, the rubber meets the road. We need to have solutions for Virginia problems, whether they're in healthcare or transportation. Even though we passed a bill, will probably continue to be an issue going on into the future. Our budget situation. I mean, we need to make sure we're focusing on those issues and not on some of the collateral periphery. Other than governor, we also, and I don't know all the politics of the Senate, but the lieutenant governor's race is extremely important as well. I'm not sure whether if Senator Northam, who's on the Democratic side, whether he wins, the Senate flips. I'm not sure how their rules work, but certainly it would be an interesting dynamic to have Senator Northam presiding over the split Senate, and as a House member, it will provide for some interesting politics and discussions within the General Assembly session if that's the case. Otherwise, it would be sort of business as usual in the Senate if Mr. Jackson prevails. So, even the down ticket races statewide have other impacts that most people would not be, not have top of mind.
I think it's probably fair to say, just picking up on what you commented on, that probably in our lifetimes, even mine, the lieutenant governor's race is more critical to whatever balance there is in the Senate.
Right.
And even though, and we'll get some senators in to talk about that at some time soon,
Yeah.
but whether their rules are 4-year rules and can't be modified
Right.
without a supermajority, but still it would be an interesting dynamic if there is a switch
Absolutely.
there.
And then the Attorney General's race is, I think, really quality in terms of the two candidates that are involved. Obviously the Republicans have had the Attorney General's office for the better part of the last 20 years. And I attribute much of that to former Governor Gilmore, who I think positioned the AG's office as the chief law enforcement officer, and maybe his greatest legacy is having all of these Republican attorneys general following him. But Senator Herring will put up a good fight. You've got two senators running, Mr. Obenshain and Mr. Herring, and I think it will be a healthy contest and maybe affected by the top of the ticket and turnout.
I think it's really important that the voters look at the candidates, look at what the candidates say they want to do, and not just rely on the media to define them. As much as I love our friends in the media, I think sometimes it's better, go to these speeches, go to these debates, however many we end up having. Look at their websites, read their position papers, and form your own opinion, and don't rely on somebody else to define them. I think picking up on the Attorney General race, that's probably one of the more important ones. Ken Cuccinelli has been a very activist Attorney General, probably more than anybody expected him to. And while we like to view the Attorney General as the top cop, that's not the job. They're really the chief consumer advocate. They try to keep fraud from happening against people. They do have some public safety impact. They've led the way on domestic violence issues, getting a little more into human trafficking right now, computer crimes. But it's a much broader job, and people really should pay attention, again, to what the candidates say they want to do. They particularly the Attorney General candidates, both have a record in the Senate. Go look at their record and decide if their votes are the way that you think that they should have voted or you would have wanted them to vote. And on the Lieutenant Governor's race, the Senate has had a little challenge getting used to sort of a divided government. And I think having a calm presence in the president's chair, because the Lieutenant Governor is president of the Senate, helps. And someone who even though they don't break all ties, they break most of them. And having someone in that seat who knows how the Senate works, knows all of the senators, I think will help. Again, I have to put in a plug. All 100 House of Delegates seats are up for re-election. Some of us are opposed and some of us are not, but everyone should come out and pay attention to those races as well.
You know, each of you, speaking of the Lieutenant Governor some, and I commented on it as well, thinking of the other gentleman from Hanover, one of the other gentlemen from Hanover, who has served now for 7.5 years as Lieutenant Governor, just over this past weekend called on both of the major party candidates to talk about the issues. And I think you both are saying that voters need to look at the issues and not depend on just the sniping that goes back and forth.
Yeah, not get distracted. You know, there's some real things that we need to look at and do, and problems we need to solve in Virginia. And it doesn't help to, break civil discourse and be distracted by collateral issues that really don't, in the end, affect the governing of the state. And it may be good reality TV or whatever you want to call it, but it certainly is not serious business as it relates to the things that are of need here in the Commonwealth.
You know, you made the comment earlier about sometime around Labor Day or after that, people will start paying attention. And Virginia will be bombarded with, quote, outside groups that now are, for a few years now, been able to legally weigh in. I mean, over the weekend, there was one environmental group that was being mentioned that was going to weigh in on one side, and there'll be others weighing in. That the airwaves will be filled with information that probably most of it will have, on the fact checking, will get at least partially true.
Truthometer.
Yeah, it'll get partially true.
Yeah.
It won't be pants on fire or totally true. It'll be somewhere in the middle.
But yeah, I mean, with Virginia and New Jersey being the only states that have gubernatorial races, and then with Chris Christie's sort of, I guess, runaway position, as it seems now there, I can only imagine that any resources that would have gone there will also come here. Looking at it, though, from the state economy's perspective, I don't mind that. I think it's great for all of these people from across the country to come to Virginia, send their folks out into the streets, pay for TV and radio. I mean, that's great for Virginia businesses, Virginia economy. So the more money that's spent on those campaigns here and the electoral process in Virginia is probably good for the economy. The main thing is that transparency be paramount and preserved. And when it comes to some of these federally registered entities, I know it's harder to know who the donors are and who is participating. And that's a challenge because we have the totally opposite system here in Virginia. Over $100, your donation is reported. And that's a great system that we have and enjoy, and the voters can trust the process because they have access to all of that information and they know who's participating in trying to promote a certain person to office. So if there's any downside, I think it's the lack of transparency in the process. The upside is, from my perspective, there's more money coming into the state. It's good for the economy.
I do think this is probably going to be break all the records for the most expensive statewide election in Virginia history. Again, I think that's why it is very important that the voters do their own due diligence. Don't just rely on TV commercials. It is very difficult to boil down a candidate's entire platform down to a 30-second TV ad or a mail piece that comes to the door. There's so much of information available, but nothing beats the direct source. The candidate themselves, the candidate's website outlines what their policy positions are, and to the extent they have a voting record, how they voted in the past is a good indication of what they're going to do in the future. So there's no substitute for looking and doing your own research and not just relying on what a TV ad or a mail piece tells you, because a lot of times those TV ads distort the truth.
And I don't know, Dave, if you give people the website information, but vpap.org is a great
That's a good one.
service. People can look up their own donor history, candidates' donor profiles, all of the information related to money and politics is right there. And it's a great, David Poole does an excellent job for VPAP. And also our state legislative webpage is an excellent resource for looking up the voting records that Jennifer mentioned.
We'll make sure that we promote those as we move on through the summer and into the fall. And we have already extended invitations to all the statewide candidates to come and take a full 24 minutes and talk to the viewers. And of course, this program today, we thank you all for being here, and other programs it can be found on YouTube
great.
can be found on the Blue Ridge PBS website, as well as being shown on the stations around the state. So we hope that we can do our part in helping to inform and allowing the candidates to speak for themselves.
Yeah, I want to thank you, David, for what you do for transparency in government and getting the information to the voters. It's very important.
Thanks to both of you
Thank
for,
you.
again, being on This Week in Richmond, and to our viewers, and we'll be back with other legislators and with statewide candidates.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. So what do you do? Information about getting involved in advanced technology careers, making everything from clean energy to life-saving medicine, is available at dreamitdoitvirginia.com. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.